Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Sattler, welcome
to the Supercast.
And as the intro said, welcome back to the Supercast. This is Steve Z, the man who put the Z in Supercast. Along me is...
the Superfosh, the man who put the Super in Supercast.
How you doing today?
Dude, I am really good. I have, as we said in our other recording, moving from house to house, or apartment to a house, and that's been an ordeal, but otherwise, doing pretty good. How about you, man?
Pretty awesome. Ready to talk about this film because this is one that was a huge part of my childhood. I mean, at one point it nearly made me want to be a paleontologist. That's how much I was into it. This is Jurassic Park, the granddaddy film, as I said last time. I don't know why I said that, but it's a pretty epic film, and it's a very important film if you want to study like effects and all that. It was, as I said, it was a big part of my childhood. I think pretty much anybody that was around in 1993, this movie was on their radar. Do you remember much about sort of like the year it came out or your experience with it?
Well, the biggest thing that comes to mind when I think of Jurassic Park is the toys that you had. You had the Jeep and all that. I just thought those looked really cool. So just the technology in a whole in this film. And again, we must remind you, this is what, 92, 93? Something like that?
Yeah, 93.
And... while there is a little bit of CGI, and what they do with it is really cool. I do really like all the practical stuff, especially the T-Rex, and we'll get into that later on.
Yeah, so this was a movie, like I said, it was built up. Everybody was talking about it. McDonald's had the Happy Meals for Jurassic Park. There were toys, action figures. I remember your brother went and watched it like right when it came out. And he did. And his friends, and I think your cousin was selling us on it. They were like, it's so great, it's awesome. They even like revealed, oh, that one kill was so cool, all that stuff. And then I didn't get to watch it too much later because I guess we were still pretty young, like 8 years old. But it was in the theater for so long. Like, I want to say it was in there from like May all the way to like August. So I finally got to watch it toward the end of the summer, and it was awesome. I loved it because I read the book right before, the little kids book version of it. So I kind of knew what to expect. But my sister and my mom had no idea, and they were freaking out the whole time. So it was really fun to get and watch. And I wore out my VHS of this. I used to watch it at a time. But all that being said, I did not watch it for years. I want to say probably 20 years until the other night. So I definitely have some thoughts and some things to say about this film.
Well, go ahead and set us up. Kind of get us into the world of Jurassic Park before we start critiquing it.
All right. So it's obviously the man that you got to start with when you talk about this is Steven Spielberg, who at this point, he's still riding high. This guy, I mean, if you weren't around in the 70s and 80s, then you don't know how big Steven Spielberg was. Or even the early 90s. I mean, this guy was making kids' cartoons. Just attach his name to it, and just a producer. I mean, everybody knew this guy. Producer, director, everything he touched was gold. Some masterful films, part of my childhood, Indiana Jones, E.T., all that stuff was great. And then this is a movie he wanted to do with dinosaurs. So everybody's stoked about it. And to me, it's a big transition for him because he makes this film, and at the same time, he's working on Schindler's List. And basically, he grows up after this film. It's both a good thing and a bad thing, I guess, because it's really hard for him to do those adventure-type movies now, I think. But I don't know. I don't want to get into that too much, but man's huge. He's a big part of what makes this work. And that's why when I first started watching this movie, it kind of threw me for a loop because I haven't watched a Spielberg film in a while. Anything about the first few minutes kind of like send you off, or is that just me?
Okay, so I actually had to watch the beginning a couple times just because I don't think I really concentrated on what exactly was going on until the other day, which shows you how much I was paying attention. But as we said in Top Gun, I think this was a perfect way to open the film because it's not your, oh, this is a great little park, it's awesome. No, somebody dies within the first 30 seconds by getting eaten by, I guess, a velociraptor. So you really know, it's sort of like Jaws, I guess, which he made too. And you don't see what's eating the dude, but you know it's something bad.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think, again, like we said with the other film, it's a solid way to open a film like this.
Yeah, good connection there. I like the intro lines, and it's just that, I don't know, the jumping around and all that stuff, it threw me off a little bit, just his editing choices and some of his shots. But by the time the movie gets going, he's such a masterful director that it really is a thrill ride. It's just one set piece to the next. You don't really need much a story at that point. I like to use really a scenario for this film that John Carpenter used to describe his film. He says it's a roller coaster. You know, at the beginning of the roller coaster, there's a big hill that you have to climb up to the top. But then once it goes, you can't stop it. I think that describes this movie perfectly.
We're coming from a theater background as myself. It's a 3-act play. You know, you get the intro where you're kind of setting up everything, then you get your conflict, and then you get your resolution. By the way, I guess this goes without saying, this is spoiler heavy. We're going to spoil the whole movie because it's been out since, 93, like I said?
Yeah, nearly 30 years old.
So you go from this guy being eaten by what I guess was a velociraptor to the intro of Grant and Dr. Sadler. And talk about their relationship, because as we talked about in Top Gun, I think there's a lot of interesting things about their relationship, meaning Sadler and Grant. And how do you see them as far as their chemistry and all that?
Yeah, so I think it works just because these are paleontologists. Mm-hmm. They're pretty serious people. Sure. He's a lot more reserved than she is. If you notice, like, she's the one that's usually talking to the other people. He's just kind of standing back, being, I'm just a guy, you know. Yeah. But I think their relationship works personally. They don't have many scenes, just the two of them, so we never get to see them talk about being romantic with each other. Mm-hmm. But I think it's definitely works as a believable thing, because it seems like he's the one that has cold feet a little bit. He doesn't want to progress the thing. Meanwhile, she's like, hey, I'm getting older. If we're going to have kids or something now, you got to stop acting like a jerk to kids, for one thing. That scene, it always makes me laugh with the kid. It's like, it looks like a big turkey. And he comes up into him and just like, well, you think this raptor is a turkey? And I like that part just because it's not only funny, but it also shows you this guy does not like kids. Yeah. And that's going to come back into the plot a little bit later, and it's part of his big character arc. But I definitely liked it. I think there's a part of the film that works. And I think they're very realistic as paleontologists. I mean, you see that how she geeks out when she's just looking at the plant life, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing! Some of these are poisonous plants, though." I mean, she's like big into it. She just totally leaves the tour to go help out the 6 Triceratops.
And that's what I love about their relationship, as you said, because while I don't necessarily buy the romantic side, I do buy that they're partners as far as what they do for a living. And her opinion is on the same level as his, if maybe not a little more, as you come to find out. But I really love their partnership. I do think that they work extremely well together. And, romance aside, I think they do a good job of establishing that these people have been together, at least professionally, for a good while. They know each other fairly well. So maybe that kind of lends itself to the romantic side, but all in all, I think they just fit really, really well together from start to finish.
Yeah, and so starts off, as you said, they're just on this dig, and then they get approached by John Hammond. He's this eccentric millionaire or billionaire, we don't really know what he's worth, but enough to own an island and do some very questionable research on that island. And John Hammond's played by Richard Attenborough, he's great in this film. It's weird. I saw that Sean Connery was the original guy they were going to cast for this, and I think Sean would have just been a little too cold. I like the way Attenborough plays it. He's this kind-hearted old man that just wants to entertain people. Got a lot of warmth to it.
And I think showing him embracing the kids and you realizing that they're related to him and his grandkids, I think that goes a long way to show that Hammond's not necessarily, at all anyways, the villain of the story, quote unquote. I think he means well with everything he does and everything he wants to do for this park. I don't think it's, I mean, he makes the point about in the lunch scene, which we'll talk about in a minute, that he wants everybody to see Jurassic Park. This is not just for the rich, this is not just for paleontologists, this is for everybody, as much as Disney World or Six Flags or whatever. And I think his warmness is established pretty early on, like I said, with the grandkids, and that was a nice touch, I think.
Yeah, and he has to get these experts, these paleontologists, come along and basically give the stamp of approval that the park is good, it's safe, and all that stuff. So they're all coming on this trip along with another scientist in Malcolm, played by just the wonderful, the always great Jeff Golblum. He's a living legend. He's not quite Bill Murray status, but he's up there. What do you think about him in this movie?
I don't think I appreciated Malcolm, or even what's his face plays him, just Jeff Goldblum. I don't think I think I underestimated his performance when I was a kid, because watching it now with adult eyes, to me he's my favorite character in this entire film.
Definitely.
You think he's going to be a certain way. I mean, speaking of arc, you said Grant goes through an arc, but I think this guy does too, big time. And I really enjoyed that. I think that's the best part of this film, because you think he's just this pompous, arrogant kind of guy, but you realize he does have heart towards the end of the film.
Well, he's got heart. He generally loves the human race.
Right.
At the same time, he thinks outside the box. He's a scientist that, I don't know, to me as an adult, I thought his dialogue was probably the best written dialogue. He's the one that really was the first one to bring up sort of the critiques of doing a park like this.
Well, he says right away, he says, you know, you're doing all this because you know you can, but you never stop to ask, should you be doing this? Even though you have the ability and can do this, is this not going to backfire actual animals that you can't control?
Yeah, definitely, and that's something that all scientists have to think about. When you think about the guys that built the nuclear bomb, the people that worked on the Manhattan Project, and yeah, they did it, but all of them were like, what have we done afterward? And that's the big thing about science is, yeah, it can lead to a lot of great things, but sometimes it can get out of your control, and that's one of the big things that this film's talking about. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Just a smidge.
Yeah, so basically you have these experts coming along because that whole incident you're talking about at the beginning, guy gets killed the first minute of the movie, and they basically have to have insurance to come and approve it now, so these people are supposed to help out with that. And this tour starts off pretty nice. They're going to go learn about how dinosaurs are made, and then the kids come along for the ride. Literally, it's the kids. They're coming to get in the car with them and go see the dinosaurs. And as we all know, the tour just goes awry eventually. So let's get into it. We've talked about a few of the performances already, and I think we've done a pretty good job with that. But let's talk about some of the supporting characters, if you will. For me, this is my first introduction to Wayne Knight, because I was not a big Seinfeld fan at this point. What do you think about his character?
He's another guy that I didn't really understand as a kid, but seeing him the other day when I watched this, I mean, he is the true villain of this story. He steals the dinosaurs, and you know, he basically hijacks the whole park so he can do this. And I think he's wonderful in this film. I just think he's slimy. He dips shaving cream on that piece of pie. Did you ever think, did somebody actually eat that at some point? Did he just kill somebody?
No, I don't think it would kill anybody, but definitely...
It wouldn't be pleasant.
They'd be disappointed, but I don't think they ate it. I think they just threw that in the trash. I would hope so. But yeah, he's terrible. He's motivated by nothing but money. I wish we actually knew what their whole tussle was. Is Hammond really being cheap, or is he just being unrealistic? But that's something that you don't notice as a kid. You're just like, what is his motivation? Why is he doing this? Why is he stealing that? But now you're like, yeah, he's a self-important guy. He's got a huge ego. He thinks he should be compensated more than he should be. So definitely pretty good, and I'm glad he gets his comeuppance.
Definitely.
And probably the best kill of the film. Yeah, thinks he's getting away free and all that stuff, and then he sees the Dilophosaurus, runs into that thing, and it's it's a very interesting part of the film because you've never seen it before. It plays with your expectations because this is just a cute looking dinosaur, and if you didn't pay attention earlier when they named the species as this dinosaur, and that's a carnivore, you're just kind of like, you were like Dennis here, you're just like, this is a funny looking dinosaur, he's just hopping around making funny noises.
Nope, he's a killing machine.
He's a killing machine. He's going to blind you and then eat you.
Yep.
I don't know how that thing got in the car, by the way, but
I don't either.
It's just a very good kill.
There's a lot of things in this film that I think you could spend a long time questioning, but you have to kind of suspend your disbelief a little bit, and I think that's one of them. I mean, like you said, I think he deserved what he got, and so I'm not, sad.
I put this film in sort of the Dark Knight category, because a lot of people say the Dark Knight, a lot of it doesn't make sense, but I'm like, if a director's doing a good job and you don't think about that thing while you're watching it, then it's effective. And that's the thing. You never stop and question anything because it's just moving too fast for you to do that.
Yeah. And I just don't think it lends itself to do that either because Stevie knows what this is. He knows what he's making. It's basically a horror film if you want to get down to it. Suspense, whatever. And so when you have the scenes like with Dennis or even the lawyer, like when he gets his comeuppance, that's probably one of my other favorite kills in this film. He sits on that toilet and T-Rex just gobbles him up.
Yeah, that one, I don't know. That one I don't like now. As a kid, I thought it was kind of funny, and I guess if I really hated lawyers, I'd probably think, oh, this is the best thing ever. But now I'm just kind of like, man, that guy, he's just there. Poor guy.
Probably didn't deserve to die necessarily like Dennis did, but he was still pretty slimy.
Yeah, he was. I mean, thinks about the money and nothing but that.
Yep.
But luckily they didn't kill Malcolm in that part because I think that was something they were planning actually, but I guess they were just like, Jeff Golblum, he's too likable. Let's not kill him.
And I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they didn't in future sequels because say what you will about other people in this franchise, Jeff Golblum is just amazing in any film, really. And
think about somebody who's amazing in pretty much everything. This is the first movie I probably watched with Sam Jackson in it.
Yes.
He's playing against part here, really. He's a computer nerd. He's a man that helps do the security for this place. And I believe him.
Yep. You can tell that he's probably as smart, if not smarter, than Dennis. They're probably on similar levels, but unlike Dennis, Samuel Jackson's character is definitely trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, he's trying to do a good job. He risked his life, and it's kind of rough what happens to him. His Mr. Arnold. I'll never get over that as a kid. Whenever that first time I saw that, I was like, "What the arm? Oh my gosh!"
Yeah, that was pretty graphic for that time period.
And I guess the last group of characters we're going to talk about are the kids. What do they add to this movie, you think?
I don't hate them. I don't think they ruin the movie, and I don't think they make it better, per se. But I think they do their job. I think, because we were when this came out, so I think we were supposed to live to those kids and say, this is how I would if a T-Rex was in my window. I mean, come on. That's just horrifying when you think about it, especially from a kid's point of view.
Yeah, that was the scene that first time watching it was definitely the most impactful. I mean, they're just sitting in their car, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, and this T-Rex is coming up, and they're just so helpless. There's nothing they can do. They just sit in the car trying to stay alive the best they can. So I agree with you. I think that's a big thing. Is like it's supposed to get the young viewers involved, thinking, man, those kids, they're in so much trouble.
Bit of trivia: did you know how they made the water bounce like that? Have you ever heard?
It was like a guitar strings or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, they plucked it underneath the thing.
Yeah.
I was like, that's pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, we'll have to come back to the effects later because they're just top notch.
Definitely.
But the kids, I think they do what you're saying. They something for the kids to identify with, but I think they also narratively they make this movie better. Hear me out. As we were saying, like Grant, he's the man I think who changes the most in this film.
Sure.
See him from where he is at the beginning to where he is at the end, and it happens because of this experience with these kids.
Yeah.
He's always hated kids, and he has to save these kids. He's very brave. He just jumps out there and risks his life in front of a T-Rex to save these kids, and basically has to escort them through Jurassic Park and keep them alive. And I guess as he does, he laughs at their stupid jokes and just gets to know them better and realizes, hey, these kids, they're different than me, but there's something I can learn from. And I think it's really neat to see that happen in him. And I think it's one of the big things that this movie is trying to get into is like what family is.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And something that struck my mind and that never had before is Grant kind of like an Indiana Jones type guy? Because he's got the fedora. He's kind of, I mean, I just feel like he's probably kin to Indiana Jones somehow because there's a lot of with those two characters.
Somewhat, I can see it a little bit. I don't think he's as plot armor or as crazy. Right. I don't think Alan Grant can go at a bunch of Nazis and just take them all out by himself.
I don't know, man. He stared down a T-Rex. That's pretty freaking ballsy, if you want my opinion on it.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't buy him as the same like action hero, but
gotcha.
I definitely think he's adventurous and willing to do some crazy stuff like climb a tree and escape really fast when the car is falling on him. That whole sequence is just awesome. I love it from start to finish.
I agree with that. And I also love when they're in the tree with the kids, or at least Grant's in the tree with the kids. And I think that's when you really start to see him, bust out of that hard veneer and shows a little bit of a vulnerable side and really wanting to save the kids as opposed to, not at the beginning.
Yeah. No, he was just trying to get away from them, so definitely like that aspect of the film. I think the kids do have merit in here. I think they're worth having around, and I think all child actors can be somewhat annoying at times, but I think they do a pretty good job.
Yeah. So I came up with a negative pretty quickly in our last show, but I'm having a real hard time finding a negative with this movie. Does anything just jump out at you that aggravates you, especially now that you've seen it as an adult?
Like I said, the first 10-15 minutes, and it may be just because I don't know, I haven't seen a Spielberg movie in a while. It took me a while really until they actually get to the park and that helicopter's landing before I'm in on this film. That first little bit, I know it's necessary, but all that jumping around, seeing the lawyers, seeing Nedra, seeing their dig and all that stuff, all that, it's just the way it's shot and the way it's paced, it's very odd to me.
I agree.
But once it gets into that spectacle, once it shows that long shot of that helicopter landing and they get in the Jeeps, I'm in on it at that point.
Sure.
And I think that's really cool. I think the first scene where the Brachiosaurus shows up, it takes your breath away. And I think this movie, as we start to transition to like the effects, I mean, this movie was just groundbreaking. It changed the way movies were made, and I don't think anything after this. It took a long time for anything to match up to this as far as the effects and the sound. I think was top notch as well. Got anything to say about those?
Dude, I totally agree. I mean, that's one of the things, and I think it's whether it's visual effect, like it's like the T-Rex which was there, or even the computer effects, where I think both good complements of each other. The computer stuff did not take me out of the film. Still doesn't, in my opinion, with all the CG, because you can tell it's CG, especially for 1993. But I think this movie, if you think about where it comes from as far as what people could do, with computers and stuff like that, it still holds up and is still pretty dang impressive.
Yeah, I think it's very rare for a movie for effects to age well. There's only a handful of them, and in this case, it works because a lot of it is practical, and they blend that practical in with the CG very well. And the way that it's shot, it definitely gets the scope, especially with the way they shoot the Brachiosaurus and the T-Rex. You can see this is a giant monster, a huge thing, and that's really cool aspect of the film. So definitely with you on the effects. I mean, if you're from now, you're not as our age, you don't realize how mind-blowing this stuff was when it came out.
Oh yeah,
this was just the coolest thing. The only thing I can compare it to really is like The Matrix when that came out, the first, and just how everybody was freaking out about those effects.
Well, like I said, there is such a good seamless transition from the CG effects to practical and vice versa. And when you think about it in those terms, as far as 1993 goes, they pulled off a pretty good trick with that, I think.
Yeah, and I think another thing that helps that work out is the music.
Oh my gosh.
John Williams, he's done so many great scores, so I don't want to say this is his best score, because I'd probably give that to Star Wars, but this one's up there. This is probably my top 3 or 4 John Williams scores. I think he definitely gets all the right beats in there, especially that main theme. I mean, just me mentioning it, you probably jumped into your head right now.
Hit you in the feels, man.
Yeah, that the main theme, but also the theme at the end when they're riding off. Da-na-na-na-na. I mean, it's beautiful. The man he's a master.
I mean, I've heard so many people give so many adjectives when it comes to John Williams, and I've said different things, but I don't think genius really explains this man's talent, because it's just to go from Star Wars to Jurassic Park to Superman. I mean, just on and on and on down the line. I mean, this guy just, I don't think he has a bad score in my opinion.
Yeah, or he probably has some less memorable, but when he's got the best, I mean, the themes, I'm sure pretty much most composers would just kill for his themes that he comes up.
Definitely. And I love, like, I saw some behind the scenes stuff, and I love that he actually worked with Steven and said, okay, Steven, this is the scene. And John would be like, okay, so you want the music to sound like this, you want this to happen. I mean, that was impressive for me on 2 fronts. Number one, that John Williams could see the movie in his head as much as Spielberg, but number 2, that Spielberg was as interested in what John Williams could bring as he was see what Steven brings. So I think that's a excellent partnership, and really makes this movie go from really, really, really good to instant classic. I mean, just you can't really find fault in any of this.
And I think you hit upon the big thing here. Is it's such a collaboration across all these different departments, all these different people. So what we talked about in one of our episodes way back when we were talking about the Lord of the Rings. Sometimes a film like this, I mean, you have to imagine this is the hardest type of film to make. It's effects driven. You're working with all these actors. You're working with these dinosaurs, these effects, and the music and all that. It's a lot for a person to handle, but when everybody's balled in and they all are trying their best to make it the best film, it's really magical to see how it all worked out. So I agree with you. I can't really come up with many critiques for this film as far as things that just fall flat for me. I think it's holds up well. I went into it to watch it this time trying to find holes in it, but really once the power goes off and it transitions to that theme park ride, I'm just in it. I cannot shut it off. It's one giant set piece to the next. Like, I mean, it almost gets kind of comical, really. It's like, how can Spielberg mess with your emotions and create more tension? I know. Let's have this kid climb an electric fence right when they're trying to turn the power on.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so he just puts these people through so much, and I just love it. The thrill nature of this. It's very fast paced. It's very fun.
I cannot imagine how he must have worked on this film and remained sane, because there's so much scope with this film. I mean, you got the visual stuff, you got the score, you got all the puppets and everything, and he's taking care of all of that and trying to make it into one cohesive, film. And I think that's what, when you go back and you look at behind the scenes stuff, makes this film even better, is the work that had to be done. This was not an easy film to make, even by today's standards. I think it would still at least be a chore, but Steven Spielberg had a clear vision, and he had good people to work around, and I think that's why this movie not only works in '93, but in 2022.
Yeah, and it's a deeper movie than you give it credit for. Because, on the surface it is dinosaurs chasing people around, eating them and all that stuff. But it's also got some interesting themes. We've already mentioned sort of the family type theme. I think another aspect of it is just what it's trying to say about science and really just the wonder, like when you see things that are amazing, and how sometimes that can turn into terror. I just think that's a really cool thing that happens in this movie.
And while I wouldn't categorize this as a negative, there's one thing that always makes me kind of frustrated, and that is the lunch scene.
The which thing?
They have this great dialogue, and I love the dialogue and everything, but nobody touches their food.
Oh.
Not even a bite, nothing like that. And I know that's a silly thing to say, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it just didn't seem like a natural scene. It looked like it was staged and rehearsed and that kind of thing. And so if I have anything to pick a bone with, and again, that's just a very minor thing, would probably be that scene, because I've actually been in shows myself on stage and had to eat breakfast every performance. I mean, we really ate. We had all this stuff, and so to see them just sit there, have this great conversation, and then go, "Oh, we gotta leave." I don't know that.
I guess you were into the sea bass. You wanted to eat that sea bass.
I don't know. I just like, I guess from a practicality thing, it just kind of threw me for a loop there. But
yeah, I didn't even notice. I was thinking too much about what Malcolm was saying, and then all his thing about chaos theory and all that, and nature finding a way and all that stuff. So I didn't pay attention to the food personally.
99.9% of people wouldn't. And again, I guess just because of my experience, that is something I noticed. But again, it doesn't ruin the movie whatsoever. It's just a very minor critique.
All right. Any final thoughts?
Look, this thing started a pretty good size franchise. We still have a brand new Jurassic Park movie in theaters as we speak right now. So it shows you the longevity of this franchise. And there's been, some good, some not so good, including maybe the last few of the modern story or whatever. But I think as a whole, what Jurassic Park number one did so well, you can't say enough great things about it. And I think people will be awed at this film even 100 years from now. I think they'll be like, wow, that's pretty freaking amazing.
Yeah, I think this is the King Kong of our day.
Good.
I think it's what effects could do and what a good plot, direction, all that stuff going together. It blew my mind as a kid, and I was really impressed at how it stood up this time. Sequels, I'm not as big a fan of, just because I'm like, you guys are just redoing the same thing over and over. I think this one, as far as the tone and blending all these elements together, I think this one does it the best. So it's just like, do you want to drink Coca-Cola or do you want to drink the Sam's Choice? It's your choice.
Right. I bet you there's people listening to this didn't even know what we were talking about just now, by the way.
That being said, I'm glad that maybe the new movies will turn people back to this one and revisit it.
Well, I mean, Grant, Sadler, and Malcolm's all back, so that's got to count for something, right?
Yeah, and it's on HBO Max right now, so go check it out.
Again, guys, this is a really, really good film that it's just, like you said, it's a huge point in cinema history. And it's a fun thing to watch. Just you don't necessarily have to turn your brain off, so to speak, but it is a disaster movie, horror film, all that kind of stuff. So it's really intense, and I think that like you said, even years later, it holds up pretty dang well. As I fully anticipated, this was a lot of fun to kind of travel down memory lane as far as Jurassic Park is concerned. I had a lot of good time. But hey guys, we've got a great couple of new episodes coming out. On our next one, we'll be talking about one of our other favorite movie franchises, and that's none other than James Bond.
Yeah, James Bond. We're taking it back to the early days, because it didn't dawn on me until recently. And I don't know how it didn't, because they were pushing this so much when the most recent Bond film came out. Is that Bond turned 60? Yeah.
That's crazy.
Turning 60. The whole franchise is 60 years old as of this year, as of this summer. And I really think of these movies a lot during the summer, just because I know they always did the Christmas marathons and everything, but they're really much summer movies for me. I mean, definitely the vibe of going on vacation or going to new locales. And we're going to be looking at the first 3 films in this franchise. It's interesting because it's definitely different than their later films, and you will see with Goldfinger perhaps that what's eventually going to come in this series. But it's very much a series that we hold dear to our hearts, and it'll be fun talking about it.
Totally agree, man. I mean, growing up, Connery was not necessarily my favorite, but as I've gotten older and I've watched his films as more of an adult, I've gained a huge appreciation for what he did with the character. I mean, he basically created at least the film persona all on his own, and everybody's just kind of followed suit. And, especially these 3 films, I don't think you get any better Bond than what these are about.
So that's going to be next time on the Supercast. We'll be watching those and get those out to you. And be sure to always check out our social media feeds. We have a Facebook group, but also we have YouTube. And these episodes are always available on Spotify. And if you would click the notification button, you will be notified when those come out. And you'll also make us feel pretty good because it feel like we have people following us. Also, we like feedback, so if you want to come after me for my Top Gun take or anything with Jurassic Park, anything that we might have gotten wrong on this one, please come back and tell us.
And tell all your friends, because we are, it's been a while since we did one of these episodes, but we're kind of all settled now from our craziness, so expect a lot of content coming your way pretty soon. And we hope you guys enjoy it. Tell your friends, tell your family, whoever. And
hopefully they're saying it's awesome, or at least I'll take super.
I hope so.
Thanks for joining us on the Supercast. We'll catch you next time.